Welcome to another issue or another episode of Golden Memories and Moments. This is the part of the 1873 speaker series that's sponsored by the University of North Georgia Alumni Association in conjunction with the North Georgia Corps Cadets Association, the Women of North Georgia, and the Young Alumni. And this is all in preparation as we move toward our 150th or sesquicentennial celebration of the university, which will begin officially in August of this year to 2022, and will last a year through July of 2023. And as a part of this series, we've been fortunate to be able to talk to former alumni and former faculty and staff to get their insight on the school and what it was like when they were here, and find out a little bit more about them personally. So today we're very fortunate to have former Dean Mike Hyams, who was the Dean of Students here for a number of years. And welcome, Mike. We appreciate you coming and being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So how about just fill us a little bit, where are you from, and where did you go to school, and then we'll eventually get to how you ended up at North Georgia. But where was original home for Mike Hyams?
I grew up in a little town called Nighthawks, Louisiana. It's up in northwest Louisiana. It's like Dahlonega. It has a lot of history. Instead of gold, Nighthawks has its cuisine, crawfish, meat pies, and it's the oldest city in Louisiana Purchase.
Wow.
So it's quite a historical town, and I went from one town that nobody could spell to another town that nobody could say. But it's been a great trip. It's been a great career. It's been a great life for me.
So when you grew up there, and I assume you finished high school there, where'd you go to college, and how'd you get your advanced education, etc.?
Okay, Natchitoches has a university there called Northwestern State University. When I attended, it was a Northwestern State College.
Right.
Like so many young men in my generation, when you went to college, you signed up for ROTC. You did your 2 years of military service, then start a career. And it was just expected of us in my generation. You went to ROTC, you took a commission, you did 2 years service, and then started the career for your life.
So when you got your commission, what branch was it in, and where were you stationed? What did you do?
I was commissioned into military intelligence. It was not a branch at that time. It was called Army Security Agency, and I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, to start with. Everybody starts at Fort Benning, I think, and then to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I wound up at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where I served with the 101st Airborne Division for 2 years.
And what years were those? Do you remember those?
Yeah, I'll try.
Put you on the spot here.
Yeah, I was commissioned in 1963.
Okay.
And so 63 to 65, I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Found out what it was like to jump out of airplanes.
Right. So after your 2 years, then what happened? Where'd you go next?
Well, I wasn't planning on enjoying the military as much as I did. And so at the end of my 2 years, I was visited by a representative from the officer branch, and he said he was prepared to offer me an assignment of my choice anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. If I were to extend for 2 years, or if it were concurrent travel, taking my family with me for 3 years. And talking to some old, wise NCOs, I said, where's a great place in the world to be? And they said, Bad Aibling, Germany. It's a little town below Munich, between Munich and Salzburg, Germany. I received an assignment to the National Security Agency field station at Bad Aibling, and had an opportunity to travel a lot in Germany. Had a good tour of duty. I enjoyed what I was doing, and then, of course, at the end of my 3-year tour there, I was given the option to extend for another tour or to leave the service.
Right.
And the next tour, of course, was a 1-year tour, and it was no secret where I would be going at that time of the year in Vietnam. And I said, well, if I'm going to make a career of the military, I need to look at the long tour, the short tour, and the intermediate tour. They're usually a 1-year tour, a 3-year tour, and a 2-year tour. So I did go to Vietnam, and I had a real good assignment. I worked in the Joint Intelligence branch of MACV, in the current intelligence, and it was a great year. And then
Were you in Saigon, or where in country?
in MACV in Saigon.
Okay.
Then my commitment came up again, was over. And they said, I said, what's my next assignment? They said, Vietnam.
Right.
And I said, no,
Been
I
there, done
don't
that.
think I really want to do this again.
Yeah.
And so I resigned my commission, or asked for release from active duty. I didn't resign my commission, asked for release from active duty, and went back to graduate school at Northwestern State University. While I was in college, I had spent a lot of time on campus because my mother was a secretary to the dean, and I became interested in the university and the student services. And before I leaving college to go in the Army, I asked my dean, how can I get to be a dean? And he said, son, there's not a way you could do it. There's no pathway to being a dean. It's a career thing. And so I told him, I said, if there ever is a pathway to being a dean or a director of housing or a registrar, please let me know. I'd like to do that.
Right.
Well, it just so happens as I finished my tour in Vietnam, he wrote me a letter and said, we are starting a program called College Student Personnel Services. And he said, would you like to get into the program? He said, we're going to take 6 students. And I said, yes, sir, I would. And so I transitioned from the military to the director of a great big men's dormitory as a live-in head director with my wife and little boy.
Okay.
And it was an experience to maintain order and study conditions for about 270 Louisiana cowboys.
All right.
Because they tended to congregate in the dorm by interest, and these were the North Louisiana cowboys, and they were a challenge to maintain an environment where they studied and behaved themselves, and it was fun. But I had an advantage on them because I'd been in the military.
Right.
I had some experiences, and I tried to stay one step ahead of the mischief makers.
And you were taking master's
I was
classes
getting
at
a
that
master's at it's called Student Personnel Services, and so a part of my degree program, we also were rotated in various services areas: registrar, admissions, housing, and activities. We did internships in each of those areas, so to prepare us for whatever area we might wind up in when we
Right.
when we graduated. So I went from the relatively small dorm to the second year to a great big dorm, 750 men.
Oh.
And that was an even bigger challenge, but by then I'd learned how to organize my staff and my resident assistants, and we had a good experience. And living in a dorm with a family, it was good for my wife and my son and for me. The young men loved to come by and visit, and pick up my son and take him out riding on their motorcycles, and sometimes to my fear, but they would come out and visit because sometimes they missed their little brothers and family members, so they'd come by and pick up him, Michael, and Michael is my son at that particular time. The young man in the dorm, everybody's little brother.
Right.
So he happens to be here at North Georgia now.
Oh, really?
And plant operations. He's the director of plant operations or facilities.
Right.
But when we finished at Northwestern, our requirements, we sent out resumes as a class, and I sent one to the University of Georgia. I remember doing that, and the dean of men at North Georgia, University of Georgia, was a gentleman by the name of Southern Sims, and he contacted me and said, "I don't have a position for you, but would you mind if I sent your resume out to some of my colleagues?" He said, "I think you could add something to our programs over here." And I said, no problem at all. And about 2 days later, I got a call from Dr. Owen, and he asked me if I was interested in coming to North Georgia and being a dean of students.
And Dr. Owen at that point was Dr. John Owens, and he was the president here for about 30 years or so, I think.
That's correct. It's about that long. And he brought me over and let me look at the campus, talk to me about what he'd like to do, the directions he'd like to go, and then he asked me to go back to my room, think about it some, and then come back the next morning and just talk some more about it. He gave me a copy of the statutes and the blue book and the women's handbook, which was called, I think, the Cues for Co-eds at that point. And then I met with him the next morning, and then we talked about where we'd like to see North Georgia go, or where he would like to see North Georgia go, and how we could get there. And he said, "Thank you, nice meeting you. I'll consider it, and you'll hear from me in the future. We have other candidates." And so I went home and I thought, well, this is not going to happen. And about 2 hours after I got back into Louisiana, I got a call from Dr. Owens and said, "How would you like to have that job we talked about?" I said, "Very much so." He said, "Be here July 1st. And that started my career at North Georgia in 1971.
71, okay. So you came at, and what was the official title or position that you came to first?
Dean of Students.
Dean of Students? Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we had a Dean of Women and me, and there was an Assistant Commandant of Cadets that I think was Jim Pierce at the time, and the three of us put our heads together and tried to decide which direction we wanted to go and how we could best meet the needs of the students here at North Georgia.
And at that time, was that still at the juncture where all the male students were in the Corps Cadets when you first came?
We had a very limited male student commuter population.
Right.
But it was obvious that this population was going to grow.
Right.
And we seemed to have three groups on campus. We had the Corps, we had the women, and we had the commuters, and they all tended to go in their different directions. And of course, one of the things that challenges we saw, Colonel Pierce and Mary Jardine was the Dean of Women. How do we pull them all together? How do we find a campus interest that they're all interested in instead of them going in three different directions? And we thought we would create a student activities board involving students and from all walks of life. Hal Williams was director of the Student Center at that time. Mm-hmm. But most of the student activities were being programmed and done by the Student Government Association, and they tended to be social.
Okay, sir. You're about to explain something to us. Go for it.
My first summer here, I applied for a grant from Exxon Corporation, and the goal was to help student life, developing student leadership on campus. And the president of the student government at that particular time was Bill Johnson. Mm-hmm. And so we met at the end of the summer when he got back to summer camp, and we attended this leadership training. And it was about campus leadership and students taking responsibility for their lives on campus, developing leadership through the student organizations. And so we came back and started a plan. Dr. Owen had told me in my first meeting with him, he said, you need to take a look at the campus on all 4 quarters. He said, live the life at North Georgia for 1 year, and then come to me with some recommendations as to which direction we want to go. And so he was right. This fall is very different from the winter. The winter was different from the spring, and the spring was different from the summer. So after sitting a full year, living a full year with North Georgia, Bill Johnson and I decided that he was the SJ president, to do a student leadership retreat to try to get away from students' government just doing social things and get them involved in the college community itself, the total college community, which would mean representatives on the various faculty committees.
Right.
And students have a lot to contribute.
Sure.
And so at the end of the year, we went with Dr. Owen and said, here's some things we would recommend to happen. One was student representation on committees. It gives them a knowledge of what's going on campus and why. And the students have an activity fee they paid for activities, and Mr. Gilbert, the comptroller at the time, controlled the student money. So if students wanted money, they go to Mr. Gilbert. We recommended to the president that the student government control the activity fee, that they have a budget hearings, and student organizations that wish money from the activity fee to come to the Student Government Association through budget hearings and make proposals. And that helps students organize their financial thoughts, and it helps the Student Government Association fiscally to be stewards of the students' money. And
That's a great idea, by the way.
Yeah, well, it worked out really well. There was a lot of pessimism that students shouldn't be able to handle this amount of money and everything. I said, listen, these kids are responsible.
Right.
Give them the opportunity and they'll show you. And so the money they were dealing with was just a few $1,000s. Today, the money that deals with $1 million in activity fees. So they had to take their lump sum, their money, and plan how they wanted to divide it up, and how each organization could benefit the school or be a benefit from the participation in the activity. And that could have been a concert, it could be a drama performance, and so that we were supporting a drama club, we were supporting a newspaper, how they could not only benefit the campus, but benefit from conducting the activity, planning their activities and all, and
Right.
it worked out really well. The students were much more responsible than people gave them credit for, in terms of managing money. They didn't just have a big blowout.
Right.
And at the time, they also recommended we have a director of activities, student activities, to get away from the. We had a director of the student center, which was Hal Williams, and he needed some help. If they were going to plan social events for the entire campus, we needed somebody to help student activity, help them with the activity fee.
Right.
And planning, and the recreation committee of the student government eventually became the student activities board. We were able to hire a young man out of Louisiana to help, by the name of Alterio, to help Hal Williams, and they took over the planning and conducting of activities.
Right.
The student government held the budget hearings, awarded the money, the student activity committee monitored the budget.
Right.
Here again, teaching fiscal responsibility, and it worked out really well.
Well, that sounds like it was a great way to start your tenure here, to be able to have such an impact. What other kinds of things happened along the way that you'd like to share?
We wanted to start a new student orientation program. Student orientation at that point consisted more of just an assembly. Students came in just before class, and that probably was something you attended. You got to go a really exciting orientation called Prog Week. But for the regular students, they came in and basically had an assembly, and they had some speakers, and they would get a campus tour, and then register for class and go home, or to the dorm. It was usually just immediately before the start of school. We wanted to create some excitement about coming to North Georgia, and so we said, why don't we bring the new students up and spend a couple of days on campus, let them meet campus leaders, let them find out what the facilities are like, let them find their way around the campus, let them get a schedule of classes, let them find out where their class is going to be, so when they came back to campus, they could go right straight to work.
Sure.
There wasn't any exploration. Dr. One said we could do this, and so we had to select leaders. Who's going to be the leaders for these young people that we bring in? And so we thought, well, the student governor president would be a natural choice. The chairman of the student activity board would be a natural choice. The president of the Women's Association would be a good choice, and we didn't know who the fourth one should be, but we chose a young lady by the name of Judy Norris, who happens to be Tom Palmer's wife. And we brought in, we tried it one time. I said, let's try it and see if this works. If it works, we'll go from there. And we did it, and for the first group, the summer group, and it was only about 100 or so students came, and then we said, now we'll go back in the fall and do the traditional orientation, and then we could compare the results and see how it went. Well, the people in the fall thought they were cheated, because the others got to come to the campus, and they got to meet one of their classmates, and they got to see where their room assignment was going to be, and they were ready to come to class. The ones in the fall didn't. So we decided, let's make a commitment to it. So we went ahead and we expanded from the 4 leaders up to as many as 20 as we went along, and we brought all the students in 4 sessions, one in June, one in July, one in August, and one in September. They had 2 full days. They were broken up into groups. Each group had their own leader, their own mentor. They did campus tours. They got registered for classes. Some of them even bought their books. They got ready to go then when we had various information sessions for them, but we also had some time off to spend with their leaders. Their leader, each leader had about anywhere from 10 to 20 intro students, and they got to spend the time with their
Was that the name of the program?
It's called Intro to North Georgia, and we ran that program for years, and the intro leaders position became a very coveted position, very competitive. We'd have as many as 100 applicants for our 10 slots. We wanted to start a new student orientation program. We did that program until about the time that we consolidated with Gainesville College. Then the college was getting to be large enough to make this a difficult and diverse and spread enough where continuing an on-campus program became a little difficult. So I think they have since gone in a different direction because of the home. We have 4 campuses now.
5 campuses.
5 campuses. And so during the time that we did it served North Georgia as North Georgia was at the time. It served it well. And our intro leaders became all-stars in business, and because they were responsible for other students, and they took that responsibility seriously. They wanted to make sure they were able to get their classes, they were able to get their room assignments. They knew one another, and so that was a good growing point. I know my group. I know 20 people, and among those 20, these 20 were a part of 100, and they become leaders. They were adjusted better to college.
It helped bond.
Yeah. And when they came back to campus, they knew where to go. They knew where the room was, and it was a lot easier transition.
The student activity board would be.
Well, as years passed, did the organization stay the same? And I'm referring to your organization as far as the dean of students and commandants and dean of women, et cetera. How did all that progress over the years?
We brought it,
Okay,
we tried it
As we,
one time.
the dean of women
See if this works.
position became the assistant dean of students.
Okay.
And the commandant of cadets was
For the first
assistant
group, the
commandant,
summer group.
reported to the commandant, but for student behavior, discipline, and all, he reported to me. And one of the recommendation I had when after my first visit to Dr. Owen was that we have a student counseling position.
The others got to come to the campus.
And,
they got to meet that one of
student
their
has to-
classmates, and they got to
They
take
needed
them
someone they
to
could go talk to, students with concerns,
They were
someone
ready to
that
come to
was
class at one's
not an
involved.
authority, someone that they could
We decided let's make a
speak
commitment.
with, and
We went ahead and
we
expanded
hired a
to
counselor.
4 leaders.
So we
Up to as many as
had
20.
the dean of students,
And we brought on
had
all
the
the
associate dean of
students
students,
in
was the dean of
sessions.
women, we had assistant commandant of cadets, and we had a
One
counselor,
in Mississippi.
and then eventually with the student director of student activities
Ah,
reported to
Each group had
the dean of students.
lead their own leader, their own
And
mentor.
of course, then he became the
They
vice
did campus
president
tours,
for student affairs after a few years.
classes.
right.
Some of them
Well,
bought
it was
books.
a
They got ready to go then.
gradual growing, but Dr. Owens,
Sessions for them, but we also had some. time
he
off.
always wanted you to think things through
with their-
very
their
carefully
leaders,
before
their
you jump,
leader-
look before you leap.
leader had
Right.
got-
And so we made our case, and each time we went to him with a request for some support,
And they got to spend.
we
the time
received it
there.
from
Is that
him.
the name of the program?
He was very supportive of his staff.
Intro
Right.
to North Georgia, and we ran that
He was
program.
very demanding of his staff.
That's what I hear.
Intro leaders position became a very coveted position, and very competitive. We'd have as many as 100 applicants for our 10 slots, and we ran that. We did that program, and tell them about the time that we consolidated with Gainesville College. Then the college was getting to be large enough to make this a difficult and diverse and spread enough to where the continuing an on-campus program became a little difficult. So I think they have since gone in a different direction
Okay.
because of the, well, we've been at 4 campuses now.
5 campuses.
5 campuses.
Yeah.
And so during the time that we did it served North Georgia as North Georgia was at the time. It served it well.
Right.
And our intro leaders became all-stars in business, and because they were responsible for other students, and they took that responsibility seriously. They wanted to make sure they were able to get their classes, and they were able to get their room assignments. They knew they knew one another.
Right.
And so that was a good growing point. I know my group, I know 20 people, and among those 20, these 20 were a part of 100, and they were adjusted better to college.
Yeah, it helped bond.
Yeah.
With the,
And when they came back to campus, they knew where to go. They knew where the room was, and it was a lot easier transition.
Sure. Well, as years passed, did the organization stay the same? And I'm referring to your organization as far as the dean of students and commandants and dean of women, et cetera. How did all that progress over the years?
Okay, the dean of women position became the assistant dean of students.
Okay.
And the commandant of cadets was assistant commandant, reported to the commandant, but for student behavior, discipline, and all, he reported to me.
Okay.
And one of the recommendations I had when after my first visit to Dr. Owen was that we have a student counseling position. And the student they needed someone they could go talk to, students with concerns, someone that was not an authority, someone that they could speak with, and we hired a counselor. So we had the dean of students, we had the associate dean of students, who was the dean of women, we had assistant commandant of cadets, and we had a counselor, and then eventually with the director of student activities.
Ah.
reported to the Dean of Students.
Right.
And of course, then he became the Vice President for Student Affairs after a few years.
Right.
So it was a gradual growing with Dr. Owens. He always wanted you to think things through very carefully before you jump, look before you leap.
Right.
And so we made our case, and each time we went to him with a request for some support, we received it from him.
Good.
He was very supportive of his staff.
Right.
He was very demanding of his staff.
That's what I hear.
Right, Mike, tell us a little bit about, you've mentioned your wife and child, particularly as it related to when you were in school back in Louisiana, but tell us a little bit about how you met your wife and when you had your son and how the family has progressed over the years.
Okay.
Where did you meet her?
We were both from the same hometown. Dinah went to a Catholic high school. I went to the public high school. And she was the little sister of one of my hunting buddies. And we met when I was in college, and at a teen dance. Our hometown had on Saturday nights a teen dance give the kids some place to go.
Right.
And I met her there, and we began dating, and we both went to Northwestern State. And when I went into active duty, we had decided to marry after my 2 years in the military. My plans at that point were to go into the military for 2 years, to come back, get a doctorate, and teach at the college level. And as soon as I got to Fort Benning, Georgia by myself, I said, we're not going to be able to wait 2 years to get married. And so we got married en route to Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And she has been with me ever since. We've been married 59 years.
Wow.
We had one son in 1965, Michael, and I was in Germany when he was born, because she could not travel pregnant, and then the military sent her over for Christmas. There was a Christmas project to join families at Christmas time, and so she was on a waiting list to come, which was in February, but they decided to have them all there for Christmas. So I saw my son the first time in Michael in Germany at Christmas time, and he grew up in Bavaria and had a wonderful time.
Right.
You know, especially with the snow and the seasons we had there. And of course, when I went back to graduate school, Michael was the son of all the boys. Right. Everybody wanted him as their little brother, the little brother of all the boys.
So how old was he around 4 or 5 or so? Or?
Three
Three
when we got there.
Okay.
Yeah, 3, 4, and he would. The guys would come pick him up out of our apartment and visit with him, and he was like their little brother too.
Sure.
So I think that had a lot to do with molding his personality. Very gregarious. He had so many big brothers, and then his younger brother Scott, who also was a graduate of North Georgia, went to. He was born in Louisiana and came over, and we all came as a family, of course, in 1971.
Okay.
Now Scott went to North Georgia as a physical therapist. Michael went to North Georgia and graduated as a business major. My wife Dinah went to North Georgia and got her degree. Michael's 2 daughters, Kaylee and Christy, went to North Georgia and got degrees. And we got a lot of North Georgia degrees hanging on the wall.
I hear you. That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Well, we've chatted off and on about the total university, and we've talked a little bit about Dr. Owen. But you also served with, after Dr. Owen, you also was with up until Sherm Day, so I assume you also were with Dr. Hansford and with Dr. Potter and
No, they were
They were after you?
after me.
Okay.
Yeah, when Sherm Day is one of the finest presidents I ever worked for, he and Dr. Owen were fantastic. When he decided to retire, and Bill Gerspacher decided to retire, and John Upchurch, the academic vice president, decided to retire, I decided, I said, well, let's give them a clean slate. The new president can come in and bring his own team in there.
Right.
Like lots, in some cases, a general brings his new staff in. So Sherm Day brought his, Nat Hansford brought his staff in earlier. He had to. He asked me to come back, and I said I can't come back after I retired. I have all these nice gifts, and what am I supposed to do? It's like calling off a wedding. I said I can't return all these gifts, so I'm going to stay retired.
Well, you really have, particularly Dr. Owen and Sherm Day, both of which I had the privilege of knowing, were two very strong gentlemen that I'm sure gave you support through
Yes.
everything you wanted to do.
Dr. Owen was a totally different leaders. Dr. Owen was a commander.
Right.
And you did what he said to do, and he backed you to the hilt. Nobody messed with his staff, and if you were wrong, he backed you, but then he pulled you in the room and he made sure you didn't make that mistake again. Sherm Day is a healer. Sherm Day can I almost often said he can calm the water. You put him in a troubled institution, and he instantly gains the confidence.
Because he did
people.
that not only here, he did it down at Georgia State.
He did it in 4 or 5 colleges.
Colleges.
And
Yeah.
at Gordon College, I think maybe down at Bainbridge College. Usually it would follow some turmoil where a president was removed,
Right.
and Sherm Day would go in and calm the waters and bring peace or bring confidence to the institution.
Well, he is loved by so many folks. As I could just keep naming all these folks that have been in administration and faculty here that are just adored by the alumni.
Yeah.
But tell us a little about since you retired. And you said that was in 1999.
That's correct.
Okay. So for the last 23 years, what you've been doing?
I've traveled. Diane and I, upon my retirement, we decided that we'll travel now, because so many people wait until until the time is right, and usually the time isn't right. You become encumbered with aging parents, with pets, with children, and so we decided we'll travel now and pay later. So we made one trip a year out of the country up until COVID
Right.
hit, and we've been to 50 different countries and
Wow.
been almost around the world, and it's been fun.
Is there any particular group you travel with, or y'all
Yes.
do it on your own, or
It's Grand Circle travel,
transfer?
and our favorite has been the riverboat cruises, because you only have about 130, 140 people on there, and you form a kind of a family, and
Sure.
then they divide you into groups of about 10. So when you reach a port, you go with your group, which so much like our intro group. We had our leader that would take us out into the into the countryside and
Right.
all. And then when we came back, we would be all back together on the boat again. It was a really nice way to travel.
But I believe you're also an avid golfer.
Well,
I'm not going to ask you your handicap. But
I play golf. I've played golf. Right now I play twice a week, but I've played golf and I've enjoyed the game. I started playing golf when Bill Inslee asked me to teach a class in golf for the physical education department here.
Ah,
So I got to work with some students here and teaching golf. We use a drill field as our driving range, but I became really interested in golf at that point, and retirement has given me time to play, and I belong to a league out of Gainesville, but I have a regular group I play with every Tuesdays and Thursdays.
that's wonderful. That is wonderful. The retirement life gives you opportunities to do things that at least from my perspective, that you just really never dreamed that you could have the opportunity to do. And so
Yeah.
it's wonderful that you're getting to do that. Tell me now, which was your favorite country to visit?
John, that's tough to answer because there's something great about everyone. There was something special about the outback in Australia. It was almost being in Crocodile Dundee's backyard. It was at the Uluru, the big red mountain, and it was a great visit. But then I loved South Africa. I loved everything we did in Germany. Just every place we went was special,
Right.
and they have great things about it. And that's why it was so much fun to travel and to see the uniqueness of these countries and share with other people. It was just, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
We never had a bad trip. Every trip was good.
You got another one planned?
Well, we had one planned to the Black Sea, and then COVID hit, and that area COVID hit, and they canceled them all. And so then we delayed it for a year, and we weren't out of COVID completely. So we postponed it till this year, and then Putin has stirred things up so bad over there that we canceled out. So hopefully in the future we'll get there.
Right.
I haven't been to the Amazon. I'd like to do that. I can't get Diana convinced to go to South America.
Right.
But we've been to the national parks in the United States. I'd like to do that. Buddy Merton's always posts beautiful pictures on Facebook of the places he's been in the national parks, and I want to see them all.
Well, you, like so many other former faculty, staff, didn't move too far away from Dahlonega. You still live close enough where you can come up occasionally, right?
Yeah, I live in Dawsonville, which is only about 13 miles away. And yeah, the campus, I still feel like a part of the campus. I've come to campus events,
Right.
like the athletic events, and come to the military events. So I still feel like I'm a part of North Georgia.
Well, for those who have not been up here, let me just mention a couple of things. In at least have not been up here in recent years. There was a new convocation center that's actually built next door to us. We're actually in the alumni house, which was the president's home for many years. And they built this wonderful building called the Convocation Center, and it's got room for classrooms, and it's got a wonderful basketball arena where our girls team just clinched the Peach Bowl and went on to the Final Eight and Final Four. But it's a wonderful facility, and up on the upper level they have some rooms that are used for special events, that when we have special speakers or small social events. But outside that, there is a balcony that overlooks the campus that is just the place to walk out and see the whole campus. And they named that balcony for Mike Hyams. It is the Mike Hyams balcony. So if you get up here, I would encourage you to get out, because it is the best place to see, and it is named for this gentleman. Mike, before we wrap up, I've been asking you some questions, but I'd like to just give you the floor and let you say anything you'd like to say about the school, or about the any part of the school, the job that you had, or the students, or where you see the school going, or anything that's on your mind before we wrap up.
Okay, well, I didn't work here. I think I served here. I was accepted but I wasn't a North Georgia graduate. I was accepted. Dr. Owen, in his influential way, convinced me that I should continue my work, my commissioning service. I had been discharged from the military, and he convinced me to go on a reserve unit, and he kept telling me the benefits of doing the 20 years, and I told him I couldn't find a unit, and he called me up to his office one day, and there was a commander in there. He said, "Now you have a unit." So I was recommissioned, and that was, I usually say I made 3 real smart decisions in my life. One is the woman I married. 2 is when I drove over Crown Mountain and took a look at this campus and said, "This is for me." I'm choosing North Georgia if they'll have me. And 3, it was to go back into the reserves and serve. It also gave me a chance to bring in some of our cadets to serve a simultaneous membership program. They could come in to our reserve unit and work with us. And they were a good resource for my reservists to see some real good cadets, real good soldiers that came. So I thank Dr. Owen for pushing me in that direction of nudging me. He didn't just nudge you. You knew what he wanted you to do. He was a great man. He let me build a leadership development course by adventure leadership at Pine Valley. It was called a Ropes Course, but I had asked if I could go get trained in that, and I thought we could employ that type of training with our student leaders at North Georgia, and he let me do it, and then came back, and we built a leadership course, a high ropes course, and hundreds and hundreds of students have been through there. We've even used it as a physical education course, taking them out there, and they got to climb the walls and the zip wires. We did lots of team building activities out there, and they still have it out there. It's a very nice facility, and I thank Dr. Owen for helping fund that. I want to brag on our Student Government Association. They looked at campus needs, and one of the needs we had on campus was a weight room. We didn't have a weight room. We had one room in the gym that students can go in and had a universal machine. And student government appointed a committee to explore the possibility of getting a weight room on campus. And it was myself, and then Al Terrio, I believe at the time, maybe Wes Thomas, Richard Oates, and we visited some fitness centers around the area and saw what was there. And so we came back and made a proposal to Dr. Owen, and he gave us some space in Memorial Hall to build a fitness center. And we went out and bought some equipment and set it up, and the student government helped fund it, and the use was so great. At the end of 1 year, Dr. Owen let us double the size of the center, and we had a great student rate of attendance. And then I was thrilled to see them come with the rec deck, the fitness center they have now, and it all started from one little universal machine in one little 10 by 10 room. But the student government got behind the weight room, the fitness center, saw the need, and they allocated funds to help maintain it. We hired an attendant. We got the attendant through the physical education department, and but they saw the need, and they took the initiative, and we have a nice facility now. It evolved into a wonderful facility. I couldn't be prouder of what they've done with that area. And as far as direction, this school is large. We had from of 1,100 students when I got here. And look at it now, there's probably 8,000-9,000 on campus.
On the Delenca campus alone, and around 20,000 over the 5 campuses.
That's a whole lot larger than our first year here.
Yeah.
But it's been quality. Look at the core. You can't help but be proud. Wherever they go, wherever they serve, they stand out. And I have 18 generals during my time.
Wow.
That came from North Georgia, and we're proud of every one of them. They've created the legacy of North Georgia is continuing, and it will never stop. And I look at them. I have a grandson here now, and he wants to be commissioned and go on serve on active duty. So this is just a wonderful career, a wonderful school, but you don't have to go in the military. We've got leaders in all walks of life, in government, we got in medicine, in education, lawyers, every profession, businessmen, every profession you can name. We have leaders from this small school. that are, what, not so small anymore. But you just can't help but be proud. I was honored to serve, to be able to serve this institution, and I've made friends for a lifetime
Right.
as a result of it. They're just good folks.
Well, Mike, we appreciate the contribution you have made in your 28 years here, and obviously have influenced thousands of folks. And everywhere I go, people ask me, well, what about Mike Hyams? And so I'll be able to give them a little more detail than I have in the past. But we appreciate so much you coming and sharing with us today. And
Well,
we wish you the best and continue in your retirement. And don't be a stranger now. Make sure you come back to campus.
thank you, John.
We appreciate it so
Appreciate
much.
being here.
Thank you.
John, before we use up all our allocated times this morning, I'd like to take a couple of moments to acknowledge some special groups here on campus that I had the opportunity to work with. First of all, the student affairs professionals. These dedicated people spent their time, their energies, and a greater part of their career in helping students reach their educational goals. Secondly, the Student Government Association. This group of leaders, student leaders, worked diligently to address the issues of the campus, and they did it in a very mature manner. The SGA was charged with allocation of almost $1 million in activity fees to various student organizations and activities, and they did it in a very responsible manner. The student government were very responsible in dealing with campus issues, and they were always like having an extra member to my staff. I always had the support of the Student Government Association. In fact, the Student Government Association's reputation was so great several years ago that the Board of Regents established a student advisory council. Each campus in the university system had student government representatives, and they served on this council. One of the functions of the council was to select the best student government association in the university system. And North Georgia's Student Government Association was selected the best in the university system for 12 out of the 13 years that they had the competition. The competition was stopped by the chancellor because he said that North Georgia had an advantage because they were a leadership institution, so they were no longer going to recognize the best SGA in the university system. The Corps Cadets, they provided leadership here on campus, in the community, in the state, and the nation. Certainly want to acknowledge them. Intro leaders, new student orientation leaders who brought an enthusiasm and an excitement to the new students. They loved North Georgia, and they wanted to share North Georgia, their love for North Georgia with the incoming students. My wife Diana and sons Michael and Scott for sharing me and my time with the students of North Georgia for 28 years. Incidentally, all three of them graduated from North Georgia College. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. John Owen for giving this old Louisiana boy the opportunity to serve at one of the greatest institutions in this nation, North Georgia College. Thank you, Dr. Owen. With that said, John, I'll turn the gavel back over to you.